Welcome to this ToK short video on CalmMO. CalmMO is an integrative approach to psychological mindfulness that guides individuals to cultivate a responsive, reflective attitude toward conflict and distressing emotions. CalmMO represents a significant advance in psychological mindfulness because it is grounded in a comprehensive model of human consciousness and relationships that guides individuals in understanding why mindfulness is hard, why it helps, and the domains of consciousness to focus on. We can start with one of the basic elements that results in psychological distress, which involves negative reactions to negative feelings. Here we see somebody who feels lousy and then hates feeling this way. This sets up what is called a neurotic loop, which is caused by negative reactions to negative feelings. This diagram depicts the central features that drive neurotic loops. Namely, it represents the fact that many people try to avoid or control their negative feelings. They do this by adopting a stance of an inner critic that is defensive or judgmental or avoidant in the way they try to cope with those feelings. Unfortunately, this often leads to a building up of negative feelings, and a trigger will then release strong emotions, and the person will feel flooded, overwhelmed, and out of control, and might snap in a fit of rage or experience a panic or overwhelming anxiety. Of course, if this happens, it just teaches the individual that negative feelings are indeed bad, and they will often then double down in their efforts to control them. What is better is learning to approach emotional functioning in how to be aware and attuned to one's feelings on the one hand, and how to adaptively regulate them on the other. This is called the emotional sweet spot. CalmMO helps people learn how to process emotions in the emotional sweet spot. It starts with the MO, which is a metacognitive observer. This means adopting a deliberative, reflective, responsive versus reactive, observing position of one's mind. Take a minute and think about someone you know who went through a stressful event. As you recreate the scene, allow yourself to see in your mind's eye what was going through their mind. As you do, you're getting a feel for this metacognitive observer stance, which is to step outside the stream of immediate experience and reflect on it. Now imagine turning that lens of observation and understanding on yourself. Imagine yourself seeing the feelings you have, the rush of thoughts that follow those feelings, and the situation you're in and the history that led up to it, and the other key people involved. This is a participant observer stance that is involved in the flow, but can also step outside and see one's thoughts, feelings, and context from a distance, and not become all the feelings that are flowing through the stream. Learning to take this metacognitive stance takes practice. It is not something people can do just as soon as they hear about it. But if guided, many can learn to do it and become better and better at it. The fact that it takes practice gives rise to the second meaning of MO, which is modus operandi, which refers to one's mode of operating. Modes of operating take practice to internalize so that it becomes easier and easier to achieve. It can then be first practiced when one is calm, then in mildly stressful situations, and then built up from there so that even when the distress is significant, the metacognitive observer will naturally come online. Calm, of course, is the word, but it also is an acronym. The C stands for curiosity, which is the desire to know more. This means taking a stance of wondering, seeking, and understanding. It means adopting a questioning attitude. The curious part of the MO asks, what is going on? Where did this happen before? How am I feeling? When has this occurred? Why might I be feeling the way I am? And these questions are asked first about one's feelings, then about one's thoughts, about one's history, and ultimately about other people involved. All of this is in the service of developing a rich and textured narrative regarding what is happening and why. This is in contrast to what many individuals do when bumped by negative feelings, which is to respond impulsively and reacting negatively in their attempt to control and escape from such feelings. Accepting refers to the ability to be with the pain and the awkwardness without freaking out and without harsh judgments or resistance. It relates to the concept of emotional distress tolerance. It is hard, but with practice it can be done. We can see this show up in the Buddhist insights regarding suffering. The first principle in Buddhism is life is suffering. And the Buddha realized that to run from suffering, to resist it and pretend it is not there, to try to jam it backstage or control it in other ways, does not lead to escape, but instead leads to more psychological difficulty. The L stands for loving compassion toward self and others. This attitude recognizes the basic wisdom that people have dignity and are worthy of respect, and this is the starting point for constructing a just world. It also means adopting the stance of hoping that people will flourish and have high well-being, and feeling compassion or sympathy for those who are experiencing genuine difficulties. This attitude is cultivated because most people, including oneself at their core, is generally doing the best they can. The M stands for motivated toward valued states of being in both the short and long term. The short term refers to the desired outcome one wants given the actual situation one is in. The long term refers to the deliberative ethical or moral principles that individuals have about who they want to be over the long term. For example, kind, courageous, or prudent. This values-based element allows individuals to separate their feelings from the impulsive reactive instincts and orient toward activities that will be adaptive. In sum, ComMO integrates many different principles to provide a guide for the kind of processes that are helpful when one is bumped by the vagaries of life. If we can learn to respond to adversity with a calm attitude, both with ourselves and in relationships to others, we will be able to move towards a much healthier and more mature way of being.